Indiana Fever. And it is watch me play make. Watch me roll. I'm going to take this rock and I'm going to show you what I can do with it. And she's not hesitating and she's firing. She's firing. She got herself a double-double tonight. We were on triple-double watch until, of course, the one person that was...
The Indiana Fever picked up a home victory against the Seattle Storm, winning 89-78, with Caitlin Clark delivering a double-double performance that had observers briefly tracking a potential triple-double before her removal from the game ended that possibility. Clark finished with 21 points, 10 assists, and 7 rebounds across just 24 minutes of action, shooting 5 of 10 from the field in an efficient outing that many are pointing to as a sign of her returning to form. The three-point shot, which had drawn scrutiny in earlier games, appeared to be back in working order, with Clark knocking down several attempts, including at least one from deep range. Her free throw performance remained perfect, consistent with what has been an unblemished season from the line so far. The triple-double chase became the dominant storyline of the fourth quarter.
Of course, the one person that was able to play defense on her, Stephanie White, took her out of the game, and the triple-double dream was set aflame. Let's go over here, 89-78. Caitlin Clark, 5 of 10 from the field, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, 21 points. A really nice, efficient game in 24 minutes.
With Clark needing 3 more rebounds to reach the milestone, what would have been the first triple-double of the 2026 season for any Fever player. Stephanie White pulled her from the game with
over 7 minutes remaining. The decision drew immediate backlash, with the argument being straightforward.
A healthy player within reach of a historic individual milestone was taken off the floor at
a critical moment, and the justification has not satisfied her supporters. The case against the substitution is reinforced by what happened when Clark sat Seattle, a young team, without a recognizable star on the roster, outscored Indiana in both the second and fourth quarters. The 2 periods where Clark's minutes were most limited, the Fever's second unit continues to be identified as a weak point, and those stretches made the gap visible.
4 minutes. Sophie Cunningham, she also had a nice game. 25 minutes, 17 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 rebounds. Kelsey Mitchell, she added 17 points. She was 8 of 18. Hell froze over tonight because she got 2 assists. Wow. And Lexi threw in 9 points. Mahisha Hines-Allen, 8 points. But this was...
Other contributors had strong nights. Sophie Cunningham put up 17 points on 5 of 9 shooting in 25 minutes and added a highlight reel shot block late in the game. Kelsey Mitchell scored 17 on 8 of 18 shooting and recorded 2 assists, a number that drew comment given the ongoing discussion about her willingness to involve teammates. Lexi Hull contributed 9 points, and Maisha Hines-Allen added 8. Aliyah Boston did not play due to injury.
But this was the Caitlin Clark show. It was the Caitlin Clark show. She would have had more assists if people like Dantas could actually catch the ball and then put it in the basket. So, couple of things, or one thing I want to show you right off the bat. Oh, wow. They did update the attendance. Wow. Guys,
Michaela Timpson, meanwhile, continues to develop quietly and showed flashes of improvement throughout the contest. The attendance figure that updated after the final buzzer told a separate story. The game drew 14,505, leaving the arena nearly 3,000 seats, short of capacity at a venue that holds 17,274. With tickets available for as little as $8 in the resale market, the crowd number stands as the lowest of the Caitlin Clark era in the regular season. The juxtaposition of a sold-out digital following, Indiana recently became the first WNBA team to reach 1 million Instagram followers, and an undersold arena has sharpened the conversation around whether the current on-court product is meeting the expectations of the audience Clark brought to the franchise.
This happened in real time when the game ended, because it was not up. I just checked it 5 minutes ago. 14,505 attended the game. I believe in the regular season, that is officially the least attended game in which Caitlin Clark has played. The capacity of that arena, I believe, is 17,200.
The broader observation from the game is that when Clark operates with freedom and functions as the engine of the offense, the results are difficult to contain. The stretches where she controlled pace
and distribution were the Fever's most dominant. The stretches where she was on the bench were the most vulnerable. The gap between those two versions of the same team is becoming harder to overlook.
With each passing game, a visible on-court dispute between Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever coaching staff drew significant attention during the team's latest game, with the exchange continuing onto the bench at the close of the first quarter, and at one point appearing to involve assistant coach Brian January, rather than head coach Stephanie White.
The capacity of that arena, I believe, is 17,274. Wow. They were almost 3,000 people light. There were $8 tickets for this game. Wow. Okay. So, right here, one thing I wanted to show you, obviously, Caitlin Clark, guys, she set a bit in the second quarter, and then she set a bunch in the fourth quarter. You notice what was in.
To understand what sparked it, some tactical context is necessary. The Indiana Fever run a defensive system built around icing wing pick and rolls. Rather than switching screens, the assigned defender forces the ball handler away from the screen while the screener's defender plays in a position that discourages the drive. If the primary defender gets beaten, the team scrambles to recover and rotates from the weak side. It is a coordinated system that requires all 5 players to understand their responsibilities on any given possession.
In the fourth quarter, you notice what was in common here? Seattle with no stars. There's no superstars on this team. There's no stars on this team. A bunch of character actors. They outscored the Fever in the second quarter and the fourth quarter. I got to tell you, our bench is still pretty weak right now. Our second unit, still pretty weak.
With roughly 40 seconds remaining in the first quarter, shortly after Clark hit a well-publicized 30-foot shot, a defensive breakdown occurred. Clark was guarding Zier Cook on the wing when a guard-to-guard screen was set. Under conventional defensive principles, a guard-to-guard screen is almost always switched. Clark, however, followed the team's system and iced the screen. The problem was that Ty Harris, who was
now, our second unit, still pretty weak. All right, so, of course, Aaliyah Boston's hurt. She didn't play. Interesting. Interesting. Wow. That attendance, guys, in real time, you're seeing me have my mind blown. 14,505. I can tell you, I just researched attendance yesterday. That's the lowest game in the Caitlin Clark era, right there.
Rather than hedging and recovering in line with how Clark was defending, Harris collapsed toward Aaliyah Boston, leaving Cook a clear lane to the basket. The resulting open layup was compounded by a
foul call on Clark. Clark's argument with the coaching staff appeared to center on exactly this, that she executed the scheme as designed, and the breakdown occurred elsewhere. Given her demeanor in
Similar situations throughout her career, the most probable read on the argument is Clark making the case that she did what she was coached to do.
Like, again, high level people, if they're just told you're like, if you're in school, if you're in school, how many of like the very, very smart kids, when a teacher tells them they're wrong and they know they're right, and they will argue with the teacher that, no, I'm right, you're wrong. Like, it's a common thing amongst high achievers, a common thing amongst top level athletes and everything, to argue with coaches, especially because there is a mutual respect there for the two of them. There is a mutual respect. I don't think this goes further than today.
whether Harris was truly at fault or whether there was a genuine miscommunication in real time is difficult to determine. Guard-to-guard screens in most contexts get switched automatically. The Fever's
system asks players to override that instinct, which creates room for exactly this kind of confusion. It is also worth noting that on-court disputes between players and coaches are routine at the system.
highest levels of competition.
A mutual respect. I don't think this goes further than today, but once this is over, I'll show you the clip. But before we go to the clip, we have to go in with some context. So, the Indiana Fever, as we've seen from all of preseason footage, this is a court. So, when the Indiana Fever are guarding wing pick and rolls, so say offensive player here with the ball. Offensive player comes set the screen.
Players are frequently blamed in real time for defensive breakdowns that later prove more complicated on film review. Good teams and good players
argue hard, often loudly, and then move on. The
presence of a shouting match during a game does not indicate a fractured relationship. It typically signals the opposite. Players who genuinely want coaches gone do not confront them publicly. They simply stop competing.
Offensive player comes set the screen. What the defensive players on the Indiana Fever are supposed to do is refuse the screen. So the defender is supposed to jump here, and the defender of the screener is supposed to play here. They're icing screens. The Indiana Fever are icing wing screens. And what's supposed to happen is that it's kind of forcing the player to jump in and shoot a pull-up. Because eventually you can ice a screen, you can recover, and you can recover. But
Clark showing up and fighting for her read on a possession is more consistent with investment than with resentment. The broader defensive picture for Indiana is also worth monitoring. Brianna January, who oversees the defensive schemes, is under pressure as the unit has struggled. That pressure filters down to players, and intense in-game corrections are a natural byproduct.
But what also this happens is if this player does get beat, it means there needs to be a scramble. Help, help, help. And then Caitlin then scrambles to the corner. Their whole defense was about scrambling. So what ends up happening here is, let's just say they run like wing pick and roll. Player, let's say proper spacing, player here, here, and here. Replace the other player. So, or say offensive player here, here.
None of it is personal. It is the texture of competitive basketball at the professional level. What the possession did expose, however, is that communication breakdowns on defense remain a work in progress for this roster. When the scheme is executed correctly, it is functional. When one player misreads their assignment, the whole structure collapses. And on this night, Clark happened to be the one left holding accountability for someone else's mistake.
Offensive player. Here, and here. That's normally the way teams run the W. Or they will put someone in this corner and spread to the corners. But let's just say this player gets burned. So they're here. What happens is this defender helps over. This defender who's on the screen that's here. Or a lot of time, this defender here drops down. This defender will either go here and Caitlin will go there, or this defender will go here, Caitlin will go here. But that's here. But that's what it is. They're denying and they are icing and scrambling. That is what they do. But with about 40-something seconds to go in the quarter, the play that ended up kind of right after, and this is, by the way, right after Caitlin Clark hit the, a few seconds after Caitlin Clark hit the 30-footer, when everything's talking about the 30-footer. So Caitlin Clark is guarding Zia Cook on the wing. And it is a defensive possession where it's 32-17. Is a defensive possession where it's 32-17 and, or was it, yeah, sorry, Lexi had just been blocked, and I'm going to show you guys what happens this possession, because it is kind of important to show what happens here. So, Caitlin Clark starts off this defensive possession guarding Zia Cook. The problem is this is a guard-to-guard screen. So, conventional knowledge is that you switch a guard-to-guard screen. Like, based on conventional knowledge of ball, you are switching a guard-to-guard screen. However, the Indiana Fever's tactic on wing ball screens is to ice them. So what does Caitlin Clark do? Caitlin Clark is clearly icing the screen. So Ty Harris, he's here, should be in here, guarding it like she's a big. Realistically, Ty Harris should be guarding this screen as if she's a big, because that's the way they've been playing it. So